Hello guys, it's Crazy Wolf 11 here, and today we're going to do a different type of video because if you saw in the first video I said we'll do absolutely everything. So far we've done gaming, we've done cooking, we've done football, we've done a lot of things. So now we're going to get onto the stuff, the people who like reading. And we're going to do a new series. It's called The Reading Corner. It's episode 1, and together we're gonna read as much as we're gonna read all the chronicles of the Narnia series. It contains The Magician's Nephew, The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe, The Horse and His Boy, Prince Caspian, The Voyage of the Dawn Treader, The Silver Chair, and The Last Battle. We're gonna be reading, I hope, most of the series, most of the chronicles. So we'll start off with The Magician's Nephew. Yes. Okay, so I don't know how much I'm going to read every time, maybe 1 or 2 chapters, but in The Magician's Nephew, the first chronicle that we'll be reading, it has 15 chapters. We might read 1 or 2 chapters every episode. It's going to be a long series. Okay, we'll start now. Chapter 1, The Wrong Door. This is a story about something that happened long ago when your grandfather was a child. It is a very important story because it shows how all the comings and goings between our own world and the land of Narnia first began. In those days, Mr. Sherlock Holmes was still living in Baker Street, and the Bastables were looking for a treasure in the Lewisham Road. In those days, if you were a boy, you had to wear a stiff Eton collar every day, and schools were usually nastier than now. But meals were nicer, and as for sweets, I won't tell you how cheap and good they were, because it would only make your mouth water in vain. And in those days, there lived in London a girl called Polly Plummer. She lived in one of a long row of houses which were all joined together. One morning, she was out in the back garden when a boy scrambled up from the garden next door and put his face over the wall. Polly was very surprised because up till now there had never been any children in that house, but only Mr. Ketterley and Miss Ketterley. A brother and sister, old bachelor and old maid, living together. So she looked up, full of curiosity. The face of the strange boy was very grubby. It could hardly have been grubby if he had first rubbed his hands in the earth, and then had a good cry, and then dried his face with his hands. As a matter of fact, this was very nearly what he had been doing. "Hullo," said Polly. "Hullo," said the boy. "What's your name?" "Polly," said Polly. "What's yours?" "Diggory," said the boy. "I say, what a funny name," said Polly. "It isn't half so much as Polly," said Diggory. "Yes, it is," said Polly. "No, it isn't," said Diggory. "At any rate, I do wash my face," said Polly, which is what you need to do, especially after—" And then she stopped. She had been going to say after you've been blubbing, but she thought that wouldn't be polite. "All right, I have then," said Diggory in a much louder voice, like a boy who was so miserable that he didn't care who knew he had been crying. "And so would you," he went on, "if you'd lived all your life in this country and had a pony and a river at the bottom of the garden, and then been brought up to live in a beastly hole like this." "London isn't a hole," said Polly indignantly, but the boy was too wound up to take any notice of her, and he went on. "And if your father was away in India, and you had to come and live with an aunt and an uncle who's mad, who would like that? And if the reason was that they were looking after your mother, and if your mother was ill and was going to die, then his face went the wrong sort of shape, as it does when you're trying to keep back your tears." I didn't know. I'm sorry," said Polly humbly. And then, because she hardly knew what to say, and also to turn Diggory's mind to cheerful subjects, she asked, "Is Mr. Ketley really mad?" "Well, either he's mad," said Diggory, "or there's some other mystery. He has a study on the top floor, and Aunt Letty says I must never go up there." "Well, that looks fishy to begin with. And then there's another thing. Whenever he tries to say anything to me at meal times, he never even tries to talk to her. She always shuts him up. She says, don't worry, the boy Andrew,' or 'I'm sure Diggory doesn't want to hear about that,' or else, 'Now, Diggory, won't you like to go out and play the garden?' What sort of things does he try to say?" "I don't know. He never gets far enough. But there's more than that. One night, it was last night in fact, as I was going past the foot of the attic stairs on my way to bed, and I don't much care for going past him either, I'm sure I heard a yell. Perhaps he keeps a mad wife shut up there." "Yes, I've thought of that. Or perhaps he has a coiner. Or he might have been a pirate, like the man at the beginning of Treasure Island, and be always hiding from his old shipmates." "How exciting," said Polly. "I never knew your house was so interesting." "You may think it is interesting," said Diggory, "but you wouldn't like it if you had to sleep there. How would you like to lie awake, listening for Uncle Andrew's step to come creeping along the passage to your room? And he has such awful eyes." That was how Polly and Diggory got to know one another. And as it was just the beginning of the summer holidays, and neither of them was going to the sea that year, they met nearly every day. Their adventures began chiefly because it was one of the wettest and coldest summers there had been for years. That drove them to indoor things. You might say indoor exploration. It is wonderful how much exploring you can do with a stump of candle in a big house or in a row of houses. Polly had discovered long ago that if you opened a certain little door in the box-room attic of her house, you would find the cistern and the dark place behind it, which you could get into by a little careful climbing. The dark place was like a long tunnel with a brick wall on one side and a sloping roof on the other. In the roof there were little chunks of light between the slates. There was no floor in the tunnel. You had to step from rafter to rafter, and between them there was only plaster. If you stepped on this, you would find yourself falling through the ceiling of the room below. Polly had used a bit of the tunnel just behind the cistern as the smuggler's cave. She had brought up bits of old packaging cases and the seats of broken kitchen chairs and things of that sort, and spread them across from rafter to rafter so as to make a bit of floor. Here she kept a cash box containing various treasures, and a story she was writing, and usually a few apples. She had often drunk a quiet bottle of ginger beer in there. The old bottles made it look more like a smuggler's cave. Diggory quite liked the cave. She wouldn't let him see the story, but he was more interested in exploring. "Look here," he said. "How long does this tunnel go on for? I mean, does it stop where your house ends?" "No," said Polly. "The walls don't go out to the roof. It goes on. I don't know how far." "Then we can get the length of the whole row of houses." "So we could," said Polly. And oh, I say, what? We could get into the other houses." "Yes, and get taken up for burglars." "No, thanks." "Don't be so jolly clever. I was thinking the house beyond yours." Okay, guys, I actually noticed that the chapters are extremely long, and we won't be able to read a whole chapter, maybe half a chapter every episode, but 9 minutes I think is enough of reading for today. So that's how much we've read today of The Magician's Nephew. Remember where we left off? So they're just exploring and stuff. So yeah, see you in episode 2.